Yeah,
You know?
exactly. Congratulations on the Grammys. We love seeing on the TV. Super.
Yeah.
But then,
Back door.
back door.
Back door, please. Like, I remember I was a kid complaining about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad said, he just heard us, me and my friends, talking.
Right.
And he kind of laughed. And I said, what's so funny? He says, y'all keep talking like everything was fair until y'all showed up. It's like, it's always been this way.
Right.
What the hell are y'all talking about?
Yeah.
It's like, it was worse.
Yeah.
We used to have to sit in the back of a bus and behind a cage.
It's true.
We had to walk through the back doors of buildings. It's like, man, you know,
It's true.
it's like there's always, thank you. He's like, there's always this progress, but it's always slow.
Caveats. Yeah.
It's incremental.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's like there's a time when you would never gig at all,
Yeah. True that.
let alone a radio show, bruh.
Amen to that.
I'm not a big microaggression fan myself.
In terms of receiving them, or just the
Just,
concept of it, like it just
the
is.
concept of it.
Yeah.
It's like everybody is not going to like you.
Well,
Period. You know? And it's
What'd
not
you
just a
expect?
racial thing. There's just some people who just they don't like you. You know? And if they don't like you, they don't like you. And it's just like, oh.
yeah.
You know, so like the whole microaggression thing is like we have to create a world where everybody likes everybody. Where is that? Whose world is that?
And these are master classes with students.
Students,
Right.
university students.
Uh-huh.
You know, the problem with guys playing standards, having never listened to records where guys play standards, is that they don't accept the idea that the chart is it's suggestive. It's not literal. Baroque music, it's a perfect example. The chart is suggestive. You have to learn a series of ornamentations, and you have to learn how to create a sound. You make the music. In modern music, a lot of times, even in classical music, the music is written in such a way that you only have to play correctly. And it plays itself. And there's a lot of music that's like that. And when we learn songs, we don't talk about songs before we learn them. So I was just listening to the tones themselves without all the accents and the presses and the growls and all the other stuff. So I wrote her, I said, hey, thanks for that. If Lester the Young were alive, he would sue me for plagiarism and win. It was really interesting because I've often believed that you learn all of these things and then they show up how they show up. That's not that direct cause and effect that we try to see in like working out in the gym and other things like that. You know, you learn these solos and eventually they show up, but how they show up is different than you'd expect.
Well,
And that was a perfect example of it.
That's a perfect segue into this yin-yang conversation I've had with you and others over the years about genre and stuff, though, as well, because I figure if you've listened and enjoyed Grover Washington at any point in your life,
It's there.
it's going to come out.
It's there.
You know, if you've appreciated hip-hop, if you've appreciated funk,
It might not come out,
Lester Young,
but it's there. Yeah.
But it's-
But see, if Ariel hadn't played it,
right?
I would not have known it was there because how it sounds is not how he sounded.
Sure.
So it's there. I was talking to some students about the importance of the blues and listening. And one of the young lady in Chicago raised her hand and said, "So where's the blues in Giant Steps?" I said, "Okay, fair enough." I played a recording of what was actually John Coltrane playing a jump blues with Johnny Hodges' dance band. One of those honking, squeaking solos from 1954,
the original
rhythm and blues.
Right.
And I said, "Who's this?" And of course she said, "Oh, it's Coleman Hawkins." I'm like, "Not even close." And let the whole song play. And I said, "Oh yeah, that was John Coltrane, by the way." And there was a gasp from.
Right.
I said, "Yeah, I know. Everybody thinks that the thing you hear is the thing that it is." I said, "So this was recorded in 1954."
Well, there's another one, just to throw that in, the Warren Marsh playing in a big band.
Yeah.
This real fat tenor sound. You're
Right.
like, what, is that the same guy?
Yeah. It's all in there. I said, this is why when everybody tries to play Giant Steps under the guise of channeling Coltrane, it never works. It never really sounds like Coltrane. Because the only
It's also, something I've engaged with the discussions with Nicholas Payton and others about to what extent is jazz even a useful vehicle for the music that we want to make anymore? If we're just dealing with sound, if we're dealing with audiences, this is often a ghetto that forces and constrains people.
Really?
I'd love to get your take on that because I imagine it's radically different.
I haven't had that problem. We just sold out the Barbican. It didn't feel ghetto to me, but it depends on how you play it.
Right.
It depends on if your conception of jazz is, this pattern, this scale works on this song. It's a ghetto. No arguing there. But if you use the sound of the music, it's one of the few musics that I've experienced where we can use the sound of the music to create a variety of emotions as opposed to one emotion, which is, that's what we tried to do with Buckshot LaFunk, is create different emotions. And it was funny how there was a resistance to that idea.
From the audience, or
from the audience and from the people who write about the music. I would talk about it, and they would say, it was really funny. They would say the problem with the record is that it lacks consistency. And I said, well, it sounds really consistent to me. And they'd say, nope, it's not consistent. I said, so what you mean is that all the tracks don't sound the same. And he said, well, I'm not talking about repetition. I'm talking about consistency. I said, you're actually talking about repetition.
A dynamic
You're using the word
right.
consistency for repetition. I said, you're not the first person to do it. We do that in all sorts of ways. We call sidemen collaborators now, but they're not collaborators. They're sidemen. Mm-hmm. There are certain times in history when collaborators have been shot. but
not that kind of collaborator.
But an actual collaboration is more like the thing that we did with Kurt Elling, because you have a guy who does something really well, and then we have something we do really well, and neither one of us gets to do what it is that we do well. We have to find a middle way. Mm. When I was working with Sting, people said, well, you've collaborated with Sting. I said, no, really, I just played with Sting. He said, well, it's a collaboration. I said, no, I didn't come in and say, the chords on those songs, man, maybe you should change them. Should I, Brand? Okay, sure. Mm. It's like Sting brought us in to help him create his vision, not create our vision.
Right.
And I'm cool with that because I grew up being a sideman. I have no problem with being a sideman. And I don't need to use words that try to raise my level of self-importance in the process.
I was lucky enough to visit Congo Square
right.
This time last year,
right.
just before Mardi Gras. And it revolutionized my understanding of genre. Chatting to Nicholas, but also going to the square, seeing Big Chief, Mr. Harrison, doing his thing there.
Yeah, there you go.
It told me a lot more about a continuum of music.
Right.
And I worry that we've thought too much in terms of genre, in terms of box, in terms of categories, because that suits the marketplace. That suits people who sell music rather than those who make it. Now, what you're talking about, it seems, if you pair away a lot of stuff, whether it's DJs or what an audience say, is about a lack of dynamic variance.
I'm talking about botany.
Okay. Taxonomy.
Botany is my new thing to talk about.
Okay. Please expound.
Doctors get television shows.
Right.
Crime investigative units get television shows. Security guards get television shows. Botanists do not get television shows. Botanists deal with flowers.
Okay.
So if we came to a botanist and says, the problem with botany is just that it's not sexy enough, for people to get into it. So maybe we could do a show on botany where the botanist discovers a murder. And the answer is, well, man, I'm a botanist. What do you want me to do? It's like, I'm an archaeologist. I dig in the sand and I find things. And I find that to be incredible. But if it's not Indiana Jones, most people don't find it to be incredible. But as an archaeologist, you have to find contentment, much like it is in poetry, in what it is that you have chosen to do. So using the pop culture angle as a jazz person, I simply don't. And I've done both.
But you're a polymath then, in that definition. Like your understanding of botany, I'm sure at some level informs your appreciation of jazz, even though they're different.
No, I don't really. Forms. I don't. It's just more about how it's perceived. like the planet Krypton, who crashed into Kansas.
That's the whole point
And
of the
had
film,
two
isn't it?
parents that adopted him. I mean, everybody knows we
not
can't
believable.
fly and we can't. It's like, man, can you just roll with it for a little bit? It's just a story.
But stories then have functions, right? And the whole creation of Superman was to inculcate people with a sense of national pride to go and fight the Second World War, and that was certainly Captain America.
I don't think that's really
From what I
happened.
gathered, the creator of the comic was Jewish, right? And helped him forge a sense of new American identity.
I think he's a storyteller, and he found a way to make some money. I think the truth is often, he's not sitting around saying, what can I do to make myself feel more American? I get it. I'll write a comic strip. I mean, he had an idea, and that's what America's always been. It's the place for ideas. Things can happen. Things can happen there.
Yeah.
So, I want to write a comic strip. And he wrote a comic strip, and one paper picked it up, then two picked it up, then everybody picked it up, and then it became a comic book. And then 40 years or so afterwards, it became 20 years afterwards, it became a TV show. But then it really kicked off when you had the technology in these movies, and you could make he didn't see that coming. There's no way he says, one day this is going to be a movie, and there's no way to know. You have this idea.
But that relates perfectly back to jazz and to music we make as well. Yeah. I got the sense from being in Congo Square that this mirrors activities that I've seen in the West Indies.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen it. The story apparently of Central Park is that it was Seneca Village before it was Central Park.
Yeah, it was.
And Africans would just get together and make music, as they do even in Carnival in the UK and in the West Indies. And whilst they have regional variations, the practice essentially is the same.
Right.
What differs is often American capitalism, I throw that out there, and its ability to brand something, call it something and sell it and repackage it. That's the land of opportunity. And I worry that sometimes that boxes us too much.
Well, that's people want boxes. And because this is the bottom line in capitalism, in the entertainment sector.
Yeah.
Is you don't find if people pushed back, if people said, I don't want to turn on the news and see murders 200 miles from where I live, they wouldn't do it, because they do want to make money. That's really what they want to do. They want to make money. And the question is always, well, what do people want? Not what do I want to present to the people. It's like, what do people want? And you can take a short view on that, or you can take a long view. And the more expensive it is, the more pragmatic it is to take the short view. Because as a singular musician with a band, you can say, well, we're not going to follow the trends. We're going to do our thing, and the people will catch it. They'll catch it right. But when you're making a movie and it's like some incredible, I can't remember the number, it's like $40,000 a foot. No, you're not going to get a second chance if you make a movie to try to instruct people to rethink how they think. You're just that guy's spent a lot of money on a flop, out. So the context is like, what do I lose? A couple of gigs maybe. I mean, it's a much cheaper way to make records. It's a cheaper way to tour and prove your point. But I really, it's with a lot of these people, they're trying to make money. Like movie companies, movies are expensive.
They're not thinking in terms of.
They're not trying to tell truth or change people's perceptions of anything. Find me a story that we can sell. And the reality of Green Book to me is that story was unsellable 30 years ago. There's just no one. I mean, I remember, Eddie Murphy did this movie called Boomerang, and it was like some black guys owning an advertising firm in New York City wearing Thierry Mugler suits, and people were like, that's ridiculous. That
doesn't exist.
That's ridiculous. That's not. But we're in this place. If a movie like that was made now, people wouldn't even blanch at it. I mean, that's actually called progress. And a lot of times we get, particularly people who feel like, in a way that, we're owed something because of, how we got here, et cetera, et cetera. So do all these people complaining about Green Book, I enjoyed it. And then you had other people saying, well, the family said that it wasn't true. I mean, You really want to get into that, regardless of race. You really want to get into people who saw movies and said
it wasn't
the
true.
Lou Gehrig story was a lie, and that was 70 years ago. I mean, it's just like they know a good story when they see it.
Yeah.
Jimmy Pearsall, about this guy who had mental illness and he played baseball, and they made a movie called Fear Strikes Out, and they turned him into a lunatic. It wasn't actually that.
But that's the film people want to see.
That's the film people want to see. They're trying to make money. They're not out here trying to tell the truth. Well, we're going to give you a chance, like on the news. We're going to give you a chance to tell your side of the story. No, I'm not going to tell my side of the story. I don't really.
That kind of was like a real politic version, especially as an artist, as a musician. I think I'm still an idealist. I still want to change people's perceptions to the work that we make. But
I'm not interested. I just want to play with a band that's great. And I want to play for the people who have the capacity to like it. And I'm not against the other people. I'm just not really gonna, like the music we play. Somebody, I just had this discussion in Germany, and he was talking about, well, don't you want to play for younger people? I said, no, I really don't.
Sorry, I can't help.
I don't. They don't know anything. What do I want to? I mean, they like what they like. I was young once.
Youth is wasted on the young.
No, but it's not. I love that saying in a way. I actually wrote a variation on that.
Okay.
The beauty of youth is that you can be so blatantly wrong with so much conviction. That's precious. I mean, we have that in a president now, and people find it, they're like, oh, are you kidding me? Because he's in his 70s. If he was 27, people go, oh, okay, okay, we'll.
Yeah, there was loads of people at the rally. It's more than Obama.
It's just okay, all right. It's just that's the great thing about being young. About your perspective is so limited, and you can choose to remain that way, or you can choose not to. But I'm not trying to play music for people who are 30 years younger than me on their terms. I'm playing this music on my terms. And most of them were rejected. And that's fine. I'm really not opposed to that. It's just this thing that I do with my kids, and it causes consternation with my kids. I said, you got to come up to me. I'm not trying to be down with you. I'm not the lingo you guys had. Right. We had lingo when we were kids too. Y'all didn't invent that. Except you have to speak English to me. I'm almost 60. I was
in the band, fantastic drummer Justin Faulkner, and I've been lucky enough to play with his even younger brother Nazir Ebo.
Nazir's great.
Oof. So, I mean, I heard apparently you almost described him as, or maybe practically described him as a fusion drummer that you had to turn into. What does that mean? It's like
he was he had really great chops. And mostly he was a church drummer, and he was an R&B drummer. So he has a great feel. Because swing, when it's at its best, has the dance beat. Swing was a dance beat. It has nothing to do with ting, 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 like that stuff you hear people say.
Sure.
Jazz is a triplet feel and all this foolishness. No, it's basically the Pentecostal church beat. That space between the notes is the swing beat.
Shout, as they call it. There's a moment of intensity.
I'm just talking about. I'm not even talking about the intensity of it, just the beat, which is like, ja, 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 ja. That's swing. Except it's switched, sing, ding, ding, but the beat is still, ja, ja, and it's in that place.
Yep.
In that space. It's a wider beat than a military beat. And you have to, acclimate your ears to hearing music in a different way if you don't come from that. So he knew all of that. He just didn't know any. He didn't have a jazz vocabulary. He didn't know any jazz. So there was only so far we could go with the music. Is that there are other musicians where that one-dimensional way of playing worked fine. But if you put on the first record, which was 7 years ago, and the second record, there's a stark difference between the two. And the difference is that his vocabulary is super expanded now.
So what did you...
Well, everybody in the band had to give him 10 records.
Okay.
So I gave him...
Bringing it all together. I think that...
Yeah, I mean, I agree that, it's like culture's in the air.
Right.
But the difference is that, like, Missy Elliott and Busta Rhymes don't know that link exists.
Right.
It's like the same thing in New Orleans. In New Orleans, we had a song called Mardi Gras Mambo. So
Where did that come from?
They don't know. But I went to New York, And the guys were playing the mambo. I'm like, oh shit, yeah. So I start playing along with them. They're like, you know how to play a mambo? I said, oh, is that what this is? It's like, where do you know it? I said, well, that's the beat for this song in New Orleans. It's called Mardi Gras Mambo. Yeah. And it's an actual mambo. Yeah. But you know, the slave trade, New Orleans was the first port. So what you had was slaves that once lived in Jamaica.
That's right, yeah.
They're now living in New Orleans. Slaves that used to live in Cuba, they're now living in New Orleans. And they brought all these new sounds along with the old sounds and all these cross-cultural references. And you learn all this stuff. But it's just in the air.
It's just in the air.
So when I would go home, I said, man, you know, that's an actual mambo, man. Like the Latinos said, man, stop, man. We don't want to hear that.
We're just playing it.
We're just playing, man. We don't want to learn all that
It's
shit.
like when I was there, I heard them playing Grazing for Grasslands. Like it was just, you know, and Hugh Masekela just the year before. And,
of course.
It's a diasporic culture. People are picking up influences.
Man, that shit, man. We played it in high school.
Right.
And I couldn't even say Hugh Masekela. You know, it's just like this, because that stuff is all, it's all part of the same root.
Yeah, and I'm very, you know, connected to that kind of thing. I think I didn't know again until Hugh passed that Louis Armstrong gave his trumpet to Hugh in the first place.
Oh, that's cool, man.
So there's there's this bond that connects us that we don't often realize or recognize until we start doing the work.
Well, most of us are never going to realize it, but it's up to us that can to do.
Mm-hmm. Well,
you know, and other people, they do their thing, and it's great.
And it's fine.
Yep.
As it is.
That's it.
Word.